Hello there. Welcome to a Friday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, although they're all football. Await you over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Here we are, the start of week 3, or last night was the start of week 3, but week 3 for the Denver Broncos, and Sean Payton is already going back to one of his favorite metaphors. This was from just a little while ago when he met with the media.
You know, you're searching for that perfect game, and it's an imperfect game. You know, that Shangri-La, if you will, that you're always looking for. Now, you play some that are close, but it's an imperfect game. And I think the one thing that's very important for the player is to get on to the next play. You know, get on to the next play. And you know, don't carry that snap. We'll address that snap. You know, and so that's kind of a constant message. Let's get on to the next play.
Sean, how pivotal is this?
That second part is interesting because I think what Sean Payton is talking about there is that one mistake begat another and another and another against the Indianapolis Colts. And in a game where I think we can agree if both teams are playing well, it's going to be obviously a close game. And one mistake may or may not swing it. Multiple mistakes in rapid succession almost certainly will sink the Denver Broncos on Sunday. But the first part of that, you know, he's talked about this, the Shangri-La, the perfect game. And I don't think anybody's asking for the Broncos to play perfectly. I look at this Broncos game, and I look across the league in general with week 3 as kind of a prove-it week. And a lot of these teams are trying to prove different things, right? There are a couple of 2-0 teams, you know, depending on the matchups. There's some matchups that aren't great, like you would expect Indy to improve to 3-0, but they're kind of in a prove-it situation when it comes to their offense. Can you keep doing this? We know that New Orleans last year kind of started to fade it quickly around this time last year. If the Colts are this year's version of the Saints, they would be wise to keep up their offense and the way they're scoring against an inferior opponent in Tennessee. But I look at, you know, the 2-0 game between Philadelphia and LA, I think is a showcase game. A game that will perhaps sway some people when it comes to who they like coming out of the NFC. I think Arizona is the 2-0 team with the most to prove because they're going to go up against San Francisco. We don't, I think, know yet whether it'll be Brock Purdy or Mac Jones. If Arizona is to be taken seriously, look at the teams they played. If they're to be taken seriously, even with Mac Jones, because we know how the 49ers operate, even with the backup quarterback in. If Arizona can beat San Francisco, I think they should be taken seriously. On the other side of the equation, you have multiple 0-2 teams. Two of those 0-2 teams must win and must look very good doing it, and it's Houston and it's Kansas City. They obviously have much to prove, and then the other 0-2 teams prove that you're better than we're starting to think you are. And then there's this middle ground that the Broncos are in, is 1-1. And every 1-1 team has kind of taken a different path. But in general, You play well enough to win in one game, you don't in another. Some of those teams really don't have an opportunity to truly prove. Minnesota, Washington, they're not going to have their quarterback. So it's hard to kind of judge those teams. The Ravens lost to the Bills. So that's kind of why they're 1-1. But then you got this group: Denver, Seattle, Pittsburgh, Vegas, New England, Jacksonville, Atlanta, Dallas, Detroit. Do we know what any one of these teams truly are? I think Atlanta's decent. I think I know who Dallas is. But Pittsburgh, Seattle, Vegas, New England, Jacksonville, a lot of good, a lot of bad. What do you more like? And then you have Detroit and Denver. Because Detroit and Denver have something to prove, but they have a great opportunity to prove something against really good team. Detroit plays Baltimore. Denver, of course, with the Chargers. And that's where I'm at with the Denver Broncos. I don't think they've shown a lot of good so far. I think they are quite fortunate to not be 0-2 right now. So of all the 1-1 teams, they probably have the most to prove because they haven't been impressive at all in getting to 2-0. There have been, or getting to 1-1, I should say. So the way I look at this game is, even though this team does not look prepared, if you just base it on these 2 weeks, the Broncos aren't ready for the Chargers. The way that the Chargers have looked through 2 games this season, if you just took that, no preconceived notions of either team, you just evaluated what these 2 teams have been the first 2 weeks, Broncos don't look like they're ready for this. So that's the first thing that they can prove. That you're at least addressing the mistakes and improving and proving that you are on the Chargers level, because I think that the Broncos are closer to the Raiders than they are the Chargers. And that's not to say they're a terrible team, but the Chargers are a team that's a legitimate threat to win the AFC West, and the Broncos are not that. But if they come out and they play as well as anyone has played against the Chargers this season, then I think optimism will start to come up again. I don't know if any loss to the Chargers is truly acceptable. Not because of the division opponent, but just because of how bad these first 2 games have been. That I don't know if any loss to the Chargers will make you feel warm and fuzzy about the Denver Broncos. But let's be realistic with where this team is at right now. If they're not run out of the building on Sunday, I'm not into moral victories. I'll call it progress. Because the way these 2 teams have played the first 2 games, you kind of think the Chargers might blow out the Denver Broncos. And look back to last year. Yeah, both of those games ended as 1-score games. But there were some cosmetic points that were put on the board by the Denver Broncos late to make it 1-score games. Those were really 10-point games. Chargers were up 23-0 going into the fourth quarter in one of those 2 matchups. I would say that the series last year against the Chargers wasn't as close as the final score would indicate. So you have a chance to have a result like that this year, where or not a result like that this year, I should say, where you are right there with the Chargers the whole way through, battling back and forth, as divisional games should be. I mean, look at last night. Nobody would ever say that the Miami Dolphins are even close to as good as the Buffalo Bills, yet that game was close. Should be a close game, should be a one-score game. But I think anything that the Broncos do well in this game, I think you could certainly take it as, okay, they're good at this. And the two things that I look at first and foremost, the pass rush, which I'm pretty sure is good, right? But if they rush Justin Herbert well, then yeah, that's who they are going up against that offensive line and how dominant they've looked. And then running the football. Another key thing for the Denver Broncos, if they can run the football against the Chargers, I think they can run it against almost anyone. A lot of the things that they if they do certain things on Sunday against the Chargers, I think you can look at the rest of the schedule and go, well, they could do that against everybody. There's no Buffalo on their schedule. There's no Baltimore on their schedule. If they can have success in one aspect or another or multiple aspects of this football game on Sunday, I think you can say, you know what? Expect it to happen moving forward. I just don't know what truly that is outside of the pass rush. I don't know that the Broncos can run the ball against the Chargers. I look at this matchup and I say, yes, there are individual matchups that you favor Denver. Pat Surtain, especially, I would say, given the way he played against the Colts, you're going to get Pat Surtain's best. So thoughts and prayers to the guy he's covering all day long. Pat Surtain's going to be on his game. But would you take the rest of the Broncos secondary against the Chargers' weapons? Now, maybe you like Cooper or Bonito going against Trey Pipkins on the opposite side of the line, the guy that's essentially filling in for Rashawn Slater. They moved, obviously, Joe Alt from one side to the other, but Pipkins is the replacement for Rashawn Slater. You like that matchup, that individual matchup. Should be able to exploit it. How about everywhere else on that front? Broncos receivers aren't better than the Chargers receivers. Certainly the Broncos quarterback is not better than the Chargers quarterback. I'll take the Chargers running back room over the Broncos running back room right now. I just don't see a lot of areas, even in special teams. You have Cameron Dicker coaching. That's not talked about enough, I think, because it's always such a given that, Broncos will be well coached because of Sean Payton, and they could be, but Sean Payton's 1-4 against Jim Harbaugh. They don't even have the most regular advantage that the Denver Broncos have is with Sean Payton, and they don't have it. So if the Broncos have success against the Chargers, even if it doesn't mean ultimate success in winning on Sunday, it's not a moral victory, but it's progress, and it's the Broncos proving that they are the team they made themselves out to be before the season started, not the team that we have seen through 2 weeks. 719-24-7-1313. What do the Broncos need to prove to you on Sunday? And is the only way they prove anything to you is by winning? 719-24-7-1313. Here's another chance for you to win $1,000 with the 5K a day if you text the national keyword NOTE to 95819. That's NOTE to 95819. You'll be entered for a chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. And we found out we had a winner from Colorado Springs yesterday. So NOTE to 95819. Game before 4, and we'll have a new keyword for you next hour. It's happening as I predicted, but finally the NFL has gotten around to the thing they should have done in the first place. So this coming from the NFL today, this is Ramon George, who is the VP of Officiating Training and Development, my old job, says anytime we have this situation where in short yardage, we know we want to make sure that we officiate these plays. The offensive team has to be perfect in every aspect. We want to officiate it tight. We want to be black and white and be as tight as we can be when we get into this situation where teams are in the bunch position and we have to officiate them being on sides movement early. What play is he talking about? The tush push. The NFL has finally gotten around to the thing I said they should have done in the first place. Every year the NFL comes out and here are the areas of emphasis. One of the areas of emphasis we found out on the first play of the Dallas-Philadelphia game on opening night. Respect for the opponent was an area of emphasis. Thank you, Jalen Carter, because without you, we wouldn't have known that was an area of emphasis. Tell somebody else did something completely idiotic. They do this every year. And every year, to be fair, we complain about it. Oh, they're calling every single this or they're calling every single that. It's the area of emphasis. Why wasn't the tush push the area of emphasis? You were 2 votes away from banning it. Clearly, there is sentiment, enough of it in the NFL to get rid of this thing. And the first step to getting rid of it is to officiate it tightly so that perhaps it deters Philadelphia or it is somewhat less effective. Now, as far as the latter goes, I'm not so sure that if the Eagles don't line up offsides or don't false start, I don't think you're stopping it. Right? We're not going to reimagine the tush push and say that on every single time they've done it, they've been in the neutral zone, they've started early. That's not true. It was the case against Kansas City. So why didn't the officials already have it in their head that they got to be eagle eyes, pun, on Philadelphia's offensive line? Why was this not happening in week 1 when we saw the other area of emphasis? And you know what this is going to do? There will be, I don't know how often they run this every game. I'll say by the second time, just to be conservative, by the second time Philadelphia runs this against LA, they will be flagged. It might not even take that long. It would not shock me if on the first, third, or fourth and 1, the Eagles line up for it and a flag is thrown. Again, nobody's saying that the officials have to make something up. That's the last thing we want them to do. But we know that in football, there are some calls that could be made every time. Here's one. Well, recent history. Leverage. Is it called all the time? No. Could it be? It could be called a lot. NFL officials should have been very ticky-tack with the tush-push since week 1. I don't understand why they're just getting around to it now. But what you'll see is you'll see a flag on the first 1 or 2 times that the Eagles do this. It will back them up. They will not be able to run the tush-push at that point. And then with all the areas of emphasis, the hope is that there is a learned behavior that the Philadelphia Eagles pick up, knowing that they are being watched closely, and they will stop lining up offsides. They will stop false starting. Because, again, they don't need to. They don't need to make that play effective. That's not what makes the tush-push so difficult to stop. But this is the stopgap measure until the NFL gets to really where they want to be, which is we're banning it. And they'll use the officials as the reason. It's a legitimate reason, and it's a reason they should have used long ago instead of trying to make up bogus health claims or allow owners and head coaches to look like crybabies because they're the only ones that are speaking on this play. Should never come to this. The NFL should have gone, and I don't have a problem with them looking into the possibility of any health concerns. But they dragged that thing out. They kept going back to, they were trying very hard and were publicly looking for a reason. You just do that behind the scenes, and call it due diligence. But once you found that there was no link from the tush-push to injuries, you should have dropped that. But right as you were doing that, you should also go to your officials and say, hey, guys, got a problem with this play? How difficult is this? Like, it seems so obvious, but they're so worried about making sure they can play games in Munich and Berlin and Sao Paulo and Bogota and Sydney that clearly they don't have the time to take care of their sport at home. But they're here now. The Eagles will be flagged for it on Sunday. And then what the NFL will hope is that, one, first and foremost, the Eagles behave themselves and don't try and get a head start on this thing. But two, that it will knock them out of tush-push range. So that play is run less as the season goes on. If it's run less, it's less of a conversation, but it inevitably will come up. It will happen, and it will probably happen on one of the biggest stages of the season. NFC Championship, Super Bowl. And then the next thing they'll do is they will say, no mas. It's gone. Too hard to officiate. Referees need to see where the ball is. Eagles center Cam Jurgens, by the way, said, I've heard a million different takes on this thing, and it's driving me nuts. People saying I'm lining up off sides. I'm holding the ball. I can be on the ball. That doesn't make any sense to me. Perhaps the Eagles can use this as a rallying cry. Because even though they are 2-0, they don't look as good as the last time we saw the Eagles before this season, right? Eagles use this. Everybody is against you. And now they're taking substantial steps to be against you. It's not just talk. Now it's the league itself. They already made the vote, but you won the vote. Tush push remain. Now the NFL is clearly going after you. And you're going to feel like you're being picked on. Use it. But the best thing for all parties involved is to do it legally. Because that just adds to the noise about it being banned is when the Eagles are clearly lining up offside, clearly false starting on it. So watch. If there is a tush push on Sunday, and I don't know, with everything sometimes I wonder if we talk about something so much and then it doesn't happen, or is it inevitable that it will happen? If the Eagles get in a short yardage situation, they will certainly line up for this, and there will be a flag. And then we'll continue the discourse. But this is the next step. This is the most substantial step towards the inevitability of this play not existing in the NFL next season. Take your thoughts. 719-24-7. 1313. More Drive Time Sports right after this. The votes have been tabulated, and Silas Lambert of Colorado Springs Christian is your athlete of the week. Coincidental that he ran away with the voting. Got 97%, I think, something like that, because it was running away from defenders. See what I did there? That got him nominated. So congratulations to Silas, obviously being a Friday night. Has a game going on. But he is our third athlete of the week of the season. And our athlete of the week is sponsored generously by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. Go to extrasports1300.com right now or at your earliest convenience and submit a nomination for next week. And we'll have 4 new nominees for you on Monday that you can vote on. Tomorrow, Air Force looking for a bounce back, but a difficult team to bounce back against. That being Boise State, the class of the Mount West forever. It's difficult, always a difficult test. Air Force has had some success in the past against Boise State. What do they need to do to have success against the Broncos this time around? Well, I think Troy Calhoun makes the best point, and it has actually very little to do with Boise State.
You know, to have four different balls on the ground, you know, you're going to have a hard time winning when that's the case, you know, and that sounds basic, but when you talk about turnover margin and it's, you know, our first game, it's 2-0 in favor of the Falcons, but when it goes the other direction, really what you've done, you've immediately, it's like you hear it, it's a lot like a block punt, just because your series is subsided and the defense gets to inherit immediately at that spot. Boy, that makes it hard.
It starts with Air Force, this game. Because of the performance they had against Utah State, Air Force has got to be right first. And then we'll see what that looks like compared to the preseason favorite in the conference, who, speaking of bouncing back, beat Eastern Washington 51-14 after that opening season loss against USF. So Air Force, they can't turn over the football. And I listened to Troy Calhoun after the game on Saturday. With some of his comments, it was, I don't think I've heard Troy Calhoun like that. And I don't mean he was overly animated or sounded different or anything, but rare, even in defeat, rare is the time where you get a sense from the head coach that Air Force didn't do the basic things that Air Force does. You know what I mean? They are all about ball control, right? And when you don't control the ball, that's very unlike Air Force. And the comments that I heard Troy Calhoun say after the game was basically, we weren't Air Force. Now, he didn't say exactly that, but that's what, to me, he was intimating. Is that we weren't even the team that we're supposed to be all the time, which is hanging on to the football. If another team stops us, then, you know, you tip your cap. But Air Force, not a team that usually coughs up the football as much as they did. And you look at the Utah State game. Not every fumble was recovered by the other team, right? One fumble, they actually ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive. One fumble made a drive stalled, and then you have one fumble And I'll throw an interception into the mix here, just turnovers in general. 2 of the Falcons' turnovers led to 14 Utah State points in a game that Air Force lost by 19. Right? It doesn't add up to ultimately make the difference, but how about that stalled drive because of a fumble? You add that into the mix. Those were some points that were potentially out there. You know, Air Force's offense showed quite a bit of good mixed in with their struggles. I don't know that it ultimately makes the difference because that Utah State offense just really started humming in the second half. But it's 14 points that Air Force, in an indirect way, gifts them by turning the football over in a game you lose by 19 points. So first and foremost, that can't happen again. If Utah State made them pay for it, what do you think Boise State's going to do? So first things first, Air Force has got to take care of the football, and then you take your chances, and then you see how you line up against the Broncos. Now, the Broncos, as you know, had a running back, a pretty high-profile running back last year who got every single one of the carries. And Spencer Danielson has done it's like the Moneyball thing. We can recreate him in the aggregate. Dylan Riley, Sire Gaines, Malik Sherrod combined are supposed to approximate what they had in Ashton Genty. So there are 3 running backs that Boise State leans on. Dylan Riley had a $123 against Eastern Washington. They all scored touchdowns. It's a different type of preparation, right? When you're game planning against Ashton Genty last year, it's like, I mean, good luck stopping Ashton Genty, but at least you know what you're expecting. They could use any one of those 3 guys, all of them with differing skill sets, different body types. They all bring something different to the table. None of them are as good as Ashton Genty individually, but collectively, against Eastern Washington at least, the Boise State running game looked as dangerous even as it did with Ashton Genty. So you got to start there because everything else Boise State does comes off of that run game, and they become a very dangerous passing team when teams start to load up the box and commit all of their effort and energy into stopping the run game, as Troy Calhoun mentioned.
If you looked at the number of explosives that they've had offensively, especially in the most recent game, outworks because they are very effective in how well they run the ball by having really capable guys doing it. But the other part of what it does too, I mean, now you get where you have so many guys near the line of scrimmage because you feel obligated to commit in order to stop the run that, you know, there's a little more space back behind you.
For a secondary that struggled against Utah State, and that was the number one thing I was looking out for last week, was how would this inexperienced secondary hold up against a quarterback that transferred in from Utah, that played in a Rose Bowl. You know, it was a big get for Bronco Mendenhall. How would that secondary hold up? And the answer is not great. And now you have Maddox Madsen, and you have some dangerous receivers that Boise State can employ. But to Troy Calhoun's point, it all starts with that running game. And you got to find ways. I think what he's implying there is they got to find ways to win one-on-ones at the line of scrimmage so they don't have to commit numbers forward. Can they do that? They have a pretty good front seven. Can they win their one-on-ones to give them a chance to be able to defend the Boise State run without committing extra numbers, without loading up the box? Because if they do, then you're leaving your inexperienced young secondary on islands. So take care of the football offensively first and foremost. Take care of the football. It's cliche, but you got to try to keep this offense off the field. Got to try to keep Maddox Madsen off the field. If they can do that to a degree, if they don't beat themselves by either turning over the football or just having drives stall because they have to recover their own fumble, then you've done your job offensively, and then the real work begins, which is trying to find a way to limit what Boise State does offensively. I kind of look at this game a little bit, going back to the first segment with the Denver Broncos. I think we look at these two teams, and I don't think we're under any great misconception about this matchup and how difficult it is for Air Force. But this is a team that I expect to get back to a bowl game, a team that I expect to be a little bit frisky in the Mountain West, and to be able to have one or two wins where you look back and you go, I don't think many people had Air Force winning that game. This would certainly qualify. But given the way that they played against Utah State and the issues that they had, just get back to, get back to neutral. Right? You took one step forward with the Bucknell game. You definitely took two steps back with the Utah State game. Now make up some ground, get back to neutral, see where that gets you. See where that gets you against Boise State. Win or lose. And then go on with the rest of the Mountain West season. Don't know if it's ideal timing for Air Force to be welcoming Boise State, given the number of things they had to correct from Utah State. But the one thing I will say is that Boise State already had their bounce back after that disappointing and borderline embarrassing loss to USF. They already took out their frustrations on Eastern Washington. I think Boise State's coming into Colorado Springs thinking they won't have a lot of issues with Air Force. Even though publicly, I'm sure they'll say what teams usually say publicly about their opponent. So find a way to win your one-on-one so you don't have to load up the box to stop the Boise State rushing attack. And then offensively, hang on to the football. Troy Calhoun and Sean Payton are kind of singing from the same hymnal right now because their teams are not winning the turnover margin, and it's vitally important that they do. 719-247-1313. We'll get into what to watch out for and what to look for when it comes to CU and CSU. The Rams back in action as well. That a lot of that has to do with the quarterbacking position. So we'll get into that. Coming up in the immediate future, more on the Broncos and Chargers. And the injury report is out for Sunday's game. And, yeah, the word out will be used multiple times when it comes to the Broncos. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour 2 on this Friday. Appreciate you watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. You can find it in all of those places as long as you follow at XTRA Sports 1300. And while you're there, like, subscribe, do the things that I am required to ask of you when it comes to watching a live stream of a show. And while you're there, more importantly, interact. Let me know your thoughts on Sunday's game between the Broncos and the Chargers. Let's talk about that a little bit more here. I think what this is on Sunday is a prove-it game for the Denver Broncos. This is a chance to prove, and I don't even know that they could have proven this the first 2 weeks, if I'm being honest. Prove that you're the team you think you are. And the best way to do that would be to beat the Chargers, but just don't look like you have. We've kind of changed the perspective a little bit on this football team because now it's not, I think before the season it was thought the Broncos would win and maybe not have that difficult of a time with either Tennessee or Indy. And then it's like, okay, is what we see through 2 weeks real? Now you can show it against the Chargers. It's not even that. We have seen a team that cannot get both sides of the football working at the same time. A team that is making way too many mistakes. And one mistake is compounding into 2 and 3. And we see a quarterback who's letting the emotions of the moment get the better of him. They don't look anything like the team that they said they would be at the start of the season. So this is the opportunity. It's not the best opportunity because the Chargers look formidable through 2 weeks, but this is what you have, and this is what you have in a divisional contest. That means more. Prove that you're the team you think you are. It's going to be harder to do that when 2 of the players that are supposed to tie all of this together are not going to play. Official injury report has come out for Sunday, and both Dre Greenlaw and Evan Ingram are out. Should not be a surprise. They have been on the injury report all week long. For Dre Greenlaw, we still have yet to see him make his regular season debut. And Evan Ingram, this is now 2, don't forget, 2 injuries that have popped up for Evan Ingram in 3 weeks. He didn't have a back issue against the Titans. That's not why he left that game. But these are 2 players that were supposed to tie everything together. On the offensive side, it was Evan Ingram, the Joker, create all of these matchup problems that Sean Payton could exploit. Well, he hasn't been on the field a lot, and now he's not going to be on the field at all on Sunday. And on the other side of the football, with all the good that the Broncos have on their defense, Dre Greenlaw was supposed to tie it all together, fortify that position group, fortify that level of your defense. And we have yet to see him do that. And especially last week against Indianapolis, they missed him dearly, and he hasn't even played for them yet. So these are real problematic injuries for the Denver Broncos. We talked about all this depth that the Broncos have, and they do have depth. It's not at those positions, which is part of the reason why they felt compelled to take a risk with the injury history of both of those players to bring them in because they needed them. Marvin Mims is hurt, if Troy Franklin's hurt, if RJ Harvey's hurt, if somebody on the defensive line is hurt, you go, okay, well, next man up mentality, they got some depth there. It's not they're depth players for a reason. But there are positions with depth. Those positions, they don't have depth. They don't have the top line talent, which Greenlaw and Evan Ingram were supposed to be, and they don't have the depth behind them. And so there is a glaring weakness on the defensive side of the football for the Denver Broncos. And the Chargers have just the player to exploit it. This is from former Charger fullback Lorenzo Neal, who joined me on the show.
Yeah, what McConkey can do, there's a receiver, how he's able to spread the field and get people open. He's really quick in and out of his breaks. McConkey is a playmaker, and now you see the way that now you got the deep ball because you got receivers going down deep.
I think Ladd McConkey is going to be a little bit the tight ends, but mostly Ladd McConkey, I think, is going to be employed to exploit that weakness in the Broncos defense. With his ability to get in and out of routes quickly, he's a guy that you can play closer to the line of scrimmage and is going to give Justin Herbert the ability to get rid of the football quickly to counteract what the Broncos do best, which is rush the passer. And then there's another aspect to this, that second level of the Broncos defense that could be exploited by the Chargers, and it has to do with their run game. Here's Lorenzo Neal again.
Biggest, I think, overhaul for the Chargers, too, is the two-headed monster, the running back. You got two running backs. Two of the running backs last year, the first and second string running back last year, are no longer on the roster. That's what the Chargers went out and they said, we have to be more efficient running the ball. And I think you'll see the Chargers try to impose their will on Denver running the ball on Sunday.
And you saw when Jonathan Taylor, who is good enough to get through the first level, right? Now, there were players, John Franklin Myers mentioned this after the Tennessee game, that they weren't enthralled with their ability to tackle against Tennessee. But good running backs, you kind of expect them every once in a while, if not regularly, to at least get past that first wave, that first line of defense. Broncos weren't very good at keeping. If Jonathan Taylor got through the first level, he got to the third. Like, it would just easy as that. You either stopped him at the line of scrimmage, which the Broncos did not do a lot, or until they stacked the box with 9 players on that final drive, or Jonathan Taylor was into the secondary. That's where Dre Greenlaw can help you out a little bit as well. Now, Alex Singleton should help you there. The one thing that Alex Singleton has proven he can do is tackle. But you're going to need him to be able to do that. Because Najee Harris is recovered from the injury, and they have Amarion Hampton as well. So I would expect, because the Chargers are a good football team with quality personnel, they're going to be able to exploit that weakness in the Denver Broncos defense, and you already saw it last year. It's not like there are any secrets between these two teams. In one of the games, J.K. Dobbins ran all over the Denver Broncos. In the second game, the other matchup, it was more about Justin Herbert and the passing attack, but they've exploited the Broncos defense in 2 meetings last year, attacking the very same spot in that defense. And they're going to try and do it again. So it's even more imperative that the Broncos, with the run game, they just got to tackle. I mean, it's as simple as that. As far as the passing game, They got to try to get to Herbert quickly. With Trey Pipkins, you got to believe if you're the Denver Broncos, you can win that. Joe Alt, that's not as easy of a path to get to Justin Herbert. But with the Broncos' quality pass rush, they should be able to have opportunities to get to Justin Herbert around the right side. And then you have to throw in Justin Herbert's mobility. So you feel better about the Broncos defense than the Broncos offense, I think, going into this game. But the Broncos defense has probably the more difficult test, although the Chargers defense is very good. But you take into account that Khalil Mack is out. It's just like I go through top to bottom, left to right, the whole, there's just not a position group, a matchup that I look at. There's some individual ones. Where do you put Pat Surtain? Do you want him to take away the deep ball with Quentin Johnston? Or do you kind of move him around? I feel like you got to move Pat Surtain around. I don't think this is a game where you just say, hey, go get that guy. Because even though you have to respect Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey, and now Quentin Johnston's been a bit of a revelation given his issues that he had when he first came into the league with being able to catch passes. You got to respect all three, but none of them are Jamar Chase. None of them are Justin Jefferson. And to me, if you're meeting a team that has multiple receivers that can hurt you, and one of them is not top tier elite, I think if you're Vance Joseph, you mix it up. You give Surtain a side of the field, or you change up his assignment depending on down in distance and the game situation. I don't think Pat Surtain just stays on one guy all day. That's hard enough to do with the way that you can do the pre-snap movement and stuff, but I think Pat Surtain's got to be all over the place on Sunday. Trying to take away Ladd McConkey on some drives, Keenan Allen on some, take away the deep ball with Quentin Johnston sometimes. He's going to be key. And then on the other side of the football, even without Khalil Mack, the LA Chargers still have one of the elite defensive players in the league in Derwin James that will certainly be all over the place. Here's Lorenzo Neal on Derwin James.
Derwin, to me, is one of the best, if not the best, safety in the league. He can play in the box. He can play linebacker. He can play safety. You can guard in the slot. So Derwin James is that versatility guy that can do a lot.
And they'll use him in a variety of different ways. And you saw in the two matchups last year, Derwin James got into the backfield a couple of times, defended a couple of passes. So Khalil Mack being out is certainly a good thing for the Denver Broncos. Their pass rush is not going to be as formidable. But you got to keep in mind where Derwin James is at all times. And Bo Nix has got to be cognizant of him and where he is. Speaking of Bo Nix, we've seen the trend recently, even dating back to the last handful of games last year, of Bo Nix throwing interceptions, and some of those interceptions coming very late in a game. And I think the Chargers are going to try to bait him. I think they're going to try and pressure him. I think the book is out a little bit on where Bo Nix is right now in his development. And that is, you can pressure him, you can bait him into making some poor decisions with the football. And I think they'll utilize Derwin James to try and exploit that, whether that's dropping him in coverage or bringing him as additional pressure to force Bo Nix to throw. But Bo Nix this week had that gunslinger mentality when it comes to balancing the aggressiveness that he shows with some of his passes.
There's a fine line. When it's there, you got to hit it. So for me, I'm always going to be aggressive, especially with our defense, knowing that they can go out there and get a stop. But you can't play the game. You can't play the position soft. You got to go out there and be aggressive. And if you get gun shy, if you're scared to make a bad play, it's usually when the bad plays happen.
So Bo Nix won't be backing down. I look at this game, and you can tell by my tone that I do not expect the Denver Broncos to win on Sunday. I could see it, though, being similar to the football game last night. Right? It's a divisional game that lends itself to being close. But was there any real point last night where you felt like the Miami Dolphins could win that football game? I didn't feel that way. The score might have been close. There might have been some drives where you go, okay, if Miami does this, now we're having a different conversation, but you never felt like they were going to be able to do that. I look at this game potentially following the same thing. And that's not to say that there aren't positives for Miami. I mean, no one really paid attention to what they did against New England, but everyone saw what they did against the Colts. As Sean Payton talks about the race to improve, how can you say that Miami hasn't improved from what they were in week one? But they were still ultimately no match for the Buffalo Bills. And I could see that game on Sunday as coming away with a very similar take. Like, yes, it's improvement from the Denver Broncos after what they showed the first 2 weeks, but it wasn't enough. And even if the score is close, it's not a game where you feel like, hey, Denver has a real opportunity here. The game is really in the balance. Take your thoughts and predictions for Sunday, 719-247-1313. The latest national keyword in the 5K a day has dropped. It is shop, SHOP. If you text that to 95819, first make sure you get a bounce back, because you should, letting you know that you enter, but it will be your chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. It is shop, SHOP. Text that to 95819 and make sure that you're locked into the station every weekday, all day long, or as close to it as you can get, for the national keywords to win $1,000 with the 5K a day. More Drive Time Sports after this. Looking for some last-minute tickets for the sporting events this weekend? Why, got you covered. Let's start with Air Force football. Taking on Boise State tomorrow, 5 o'clock. If you would like to go, be the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247, 1313, and I'll hook you up with a 4-pack of tickets to that game, and tickets are still available at aftickets.com. Speaking of college football, the quarterback position always is our primary focus at any level of football, but sometimes it's even more so, and I think with the Buffaloes and with the Rams, that's where it starts with their games this weekend. First for the Rams, not surprisingly, Jay Norvell sticking with Braden Fowler and Nicolosi. I think the pseudo-quarterback competition, the faux quarterback competition, was a motivating tactic to try and get Nicolosi to straighten up, play the quarterback position the way the Rams need it to be played. I don't know if it's going to work. Here's your opportunity against UTSA. If Nicolosi is right, they should win that football game. They should. But we'll see if lighting a fire under his longtime quarterback brings out the best in BFN against UTSA coming up on SAT. Get it? For the Buffs, we've been talking about their quarterback situation quite a bit, if you haven't noticed. The report is they're going back to Caden Salter. Last week, Deion Sanders chastised the media for such a report about Ryan Staub, and it was Ryan Staub starting. So let's just, I don't want to say assume, because you know what happens when let's take that reporting as valid. And it's Caden Salter that's back out there. Said earlier this week, doesn't make a lot of sense why bench him one game, bring him back the next. But if that's what Deion Sanders is doing, and it is Caden Salter against Wyoming, Deion talked about it this week. Leadership and consistency were the two. And I don't know if Caden Salter maybe is having his head down a little bit on the sideline. He does not look like a confident quarterback. Even against Delaware, didn't look like a confident quarterback, didn't look decisive. I think that's the leadership perhaps that Deion Sanders is talking about. And we'll see, he's a transfer portal quarterback, and I know that we think that a transfer quarterback, well, he's been around the block, he knows what to expect as opposed to a high school quarterback, and we're really starting to come to this realization with the quarterback of the Texas Longhorns that not everybody makes that jump from high school to college. In fact, I think that the hit rate, if you really look at it, and I'll do this. This is a nice project for me this weekend. I wonder if the hit rate for like highly touted, top-ranked recruits out of high school at the quarterback position is as bad as perhaps it is for first-round quarterbacks in the NFL. I'd be curious to see, because I think the entirety of Arch Manning's class coming out of high school is struggling. But you think Caden Salter, and I was in this camp, Caden Salter, he's played Division I college football, was incredibly productive at Liberty. You would think it would translate easier than maybe Julian Lewis as a great example immediately. Maybe not. This is a higher level. The lights are a little bit brighter on Caden Salter. He's at one of the more discussed and followed college football programs in America. Just be confident in your abilities. Caden Salter's a dual threat QB. Be one. Because last week I said I don't know what Deion's going to do if Ryan Staub struggles. Well, I guess I know what he did. He's going to go to Caden Salter. I really don't know what Deion Sanders is going to do if Caden Salter struggles again. And Wyoming CU should beat Wyoming. I'll say that with CSU and CU. If they're decent, they should win. Wyoming is not on CU's level. However, Wyoming is really good in the trenches. I think they will make it difficult for the Buffs to run the football, and that will put more on Caden Salter. Perhaps what Pat Shurmur needs to do, even though it's kind of a scary proposition given the fluctuation of the quarterback position, maybe it's a game where you pass to set up the run. Because if I'm Wyoming, understanding the discrepancy in talent here, I've heard Deion Sanders talk enough about running the football. I load up the box early on and I say, Caden Salter beat us. Maybe that's the way CU's going to have to do it. I don't know if such a phenomenon will come to the mind of Pat Shurmur. He seems like a guy that is, how should I put this, pretty set in his ways. But maybe that's the game plan. Pass to set up the run. Pass to get Caden Salter some confidence, too. That's music to Pat Shurmur's ears because that short passing game, Pat Shurmur loves that stuff. They got to figure out something, and they just have to. I'm not going to make any bold. I made my bold proclamation last week, and Deion Sanders saw it and was like, yeah, I'm going back to Caden Salter. I said, I don't know how you go back to him. He's going back to him. So I'm done trying to figure out what Deion Sanders is going to do at the quarterback position. I'll just say this is the last. I know they already got a Big 12 opponent in with Houston, and you saw how that went. This is your last game on your schedule. Forget last non-conference game. This is the last game on your schedule that you look at and you say, even with CU struggles, that should be a win. Every other game from here on out, you can't say that. With the nature of the Big 12, you can't say that there's another game on the Buff schedule where you go, even with their problems, they can win that. Wyoming's the last one. So you got to use this as a springboard. You got to use this to figure some stuff out. And if you can't, then forget it. If CU can't get the job done and get the job done at a high level against a Mount West opponent in Wyoming, who in the Big 12 can they possibly go into a game thinking they can beat? So CSU and UTSA, CU and Wyoming, and then, of course, you got Air Force and Boise State. Air Force with some of its own quarterback questions. Just make a clean sweep. All the teams in Colorado still trying to figure out the quarterback position. It's getting late, if not already being late. Coming up next, let's look at the NFL slate. I think overall a better slate of games than week 2. And going back to our original theme of the day, this is kind of a prove it week for a lot of teams. What teams have the most to prove? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Your latest national keyword for the 5K a day is shop, SHOP. Text that to 95819 and you'll be entered to win $1,000. And then we got a whole new batch of national keywords for you come Monday. Be listening every weekday, all day, for your chance to win with the 5K a day. Again, the national keyword shop, SHOP. The NFL this weekend, I thought last week kind of meh in terms of the matchups. This weekend is better, I will say. And going back to my original thesis of the show, which was this is a prove it week. You know, we have a couple of games with all of these teams. It's still a smaller sample size, but we got some contrasting of games that we can do. Okay, they did this, they improved on this. So I think this week 3, is where you really look and say, all right, who are you, or who do I think you are? I think there are a lot of teams that we don't still know. Some teams we have good ideas, but I don't think we know fully what all these teams are. Buffalo's a wagon. I mean, we could say that the way they've looked through 3 weeks, they're really good. We don't need to delve too much deeper into who Buffalo is. Atlanta, Carolina. Atlanta, prove that you're really a good team. You had the Bucks on the ropes. They just cut Younghoe Koo today very easily. Could have a couple of wins. You're going up against Carolina. Prove that you are a good football team. And Carolina proved that you're not as bad. I don't think they're as bad as you might think Carolina is. They can pick off a divisional win against Atlanta. That would certainly go a long way to show it. Green Bay, Cleveland, nothing to prove there. Green Bay is Green Bay. This is FBS versus FCS. This is Green Bay should roll, and if they don't, then maybe we re-examine Green Bay. But Green Bay at Cleveland, not much to prove there. Houston and Kansas City have the 2 most important games of the weekend. Easily. Houston and Kansas City are staring at 0-3. Facing teams that they should absolutely be better than. If Houston is who they think they are, they should not have a problem even in Jacksonville. And that's why that one's very interesting. It might be the most interesting game of the weekend. Because I toyed with the idea of Jacksonville dethroning Houston. I went so back and forth all summer about it. Like one day I would think Houston was a team that could maybe sneak in there and knock off one of the big 3, Kansas City, Buffalo, or Baltimore in the playoffs. Another day I'm like, maybe Jacksonville is the big turnaround team of this year. I think where I landed is Jacksonville's much improved. Houston's still the class of the division. Houston show it by getting a win and avoiding an 0-3 start. Cincinnati, Minnesota, battle of the backups, hard pass there. Pittsburgh. Does Aaron Rodgers have to have some sort of a grudge against the team in order to play well? I sure hope that's not the case, because there aren't a lot of other teams on the schedule that Aaron Rodgers has played for. Pittsburgh going into New England. Pittsburgh even being a road game. And even though I do like New England as a team overall, I think Pittsburgh should go in there and win. But, man, they were atrocious against Seattle. Philadelphia, LA. Two very good teams, two teams that are going to go deep in the postseason. Perhaps some NFC Super Bowl picks being swayed by that game. Tampa and the Jets. Tampa has been one of the most fun teams, maybe the most fun team to watch. The way they've won their two games, I would say wearing the creamsicles, just blow out the Jets. We don't need late game Baker heroics as fun as they are to watch. We don't need them. You're a dark horse Super Bowl contender. Act like it. Take care of business against the Jets. Indy, Tennessee. I expect Indy to win. Can they keep up their no punting? That's really what to watch in that game. Will the Colts punt? Tune in to find out. Washington is going to start Marcus Mariota instead of Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is hurt. There's a sophomore. There's a sophomore not having as good of a go of it. Talked about how the injuries. Look at Caitlin Clark, right? The thing that derailed her second season in the WNBA, injuries. That sophomore slump that we talk about could be an injury, could be a lack of health. We'll see moving forward with Jaden Daniels, but it turns into a Marcus Mariota revenge game. Going up against his former team. Seattle, I don't know if they're good. I can't make heads or tails of them. They should be able to beat New Orleans. I'll at least say that. I think Dallas should be able to go into Chicago and win that game. San Francisco's interesting, the quarterbacking situation. But Arizona, if you're real in a very competitive division, beat San Francisco. Either with less than 100% Brock Purdy or 100% of Mac Jones. Beat them. I don't know that Arizona will have a better win on their resume the last couple of years than beating San Francisco, even if it's Mac Jones. So I'm curious in Arizona. I have to be keeping tabs from afar because obviously I'll be locked into the Bronco game at that time. And then the Sunday night game. I'm not saying the Chiefs got to win by like 3 touchdowns, but at no point should the Giants be threatening them. Figure it out, Kansas City. This isn't Philadelphia. This isn't LA. Even with Tyquan Thornton as your main deep threat, you should be able to beat Russ and company. But overall, a much more interesting slate of games in the National Football League this weekend. If you're on the go and looking for a game to listen to, we got a couple for you. We have the Pittsburgh-New England game at 11 here on Extra Sports 1300. And then, of course, the Sunday night game with Kansas City and New York. And that game, remember, you can also stream it live on our app or at extrasports1300.com. As far as Saturday goes, busy day. Michigan, Nebraska. Year 3 Matt Rule versus Nebraska not beating top 25 teams in forever. Year 3 Matt Rule seems to get right. Nebraska. This would be a telltale sign that Matt Rule is figuring it out in Lincoln. If they're able to knock off Michigan. So we got that for you. Kickoff at 1:30. And then it will be the Switchbacks taking on Sacramento Republic. as the Switchbacks continue their push for the playoffs. Perhaps you'd like to go. I do have a pair of tickets left. My 4 packs are gone. I got a pair of tickets. If you'd like to go tomorrow night, 6 o'clock kick. Sacramento's a really good team. It would be a big win for the Switchbacks if they can get it, especially starting off a 4-match homestand and a busy week. They'll play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, all at Widener Field, and then the following Saturday. So it'll be a great way to start it off by knocking off Sacramento. So if you'd like to go, bring your bestie, your significant other, your kid. Got 2 tickets. Be the 13th texter to text Switchbacks in your name to 719-247-1313. Evan Ingram, Dre Greenlaw out for the Denver Broncos on Sunday. That has been made official. And I don't know that lends itself to seeing the absolute best that this Broncos team can be. But it was always a question by bringing in those two if they were going to be on the field regularly. Got to figure something out. I could see this game not going very well for the Denver Broncos. And then regardless of how they look, if they lose against LA, Monday night against Cincinnati is going to be a must-win. So I'll just lay the groundwork for our next week conversation. Broncos don't beat the Chargers. Monday night against Jake Browning and the Bengals is a must-win because then you're turning around on a short week playing the Super Bowl champions. One and 2 after this week. 1 and 3 if you skip the Bengals game, losing to 2 and 3. Not maybe what you expected the Broncos to be. Not awful. As long as you see this team progressing, right? And that's what I said the first thing right off the top today's show. This is the Broncos proving that they're the team they think they are. And if they're the team they think they are, they should be able to trade blows with the LA Chargers. Maybe not beat them at SoFi, but look like you belong. Look like, okay, you did this really well. Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh company, they just beat you. Reload, get ready for them down the road. Because in order to win the AFC West, you don't have to sweep every team. It helps. Trust me. But just this team has just not looked at all what they were expected to be the first 2 games. Put both sides of the football together, limit the mistakes, take your shot at the Chargers. Even if you come up short, you got an extra day to prepare for a team that does not have its franchise quarterback. Take care of that business in a must-win, and then, hope that Philadelphia is overlooking you for some reason, and then things really pick up after that for the Denver Broncos. And then it's really got to keep winning. And that was about the time last year where the Broncos started to win, right? So, but the Chargers game, just the trends from these two teams does not lend itself to a good day for the Broncos on Sunday, certainly. But if they can get some things figured out, if at least they can run the football and pressure Justin Herbert, they have a chance to stay in that game. that'll be it for me. I'll not on my way. I'm standing here. You see me. Air Force women's soccer tonight against Northern Colorado on the Mount West Network. If you're interested, got switchbacks tomorrow night, and then there's always Monday. So hopefully I talk to you before Monday, but if not, enjoy your weekend, and we'll reconvene and see how the Broncos fare against the Chargers.